Bitch Planet is a story by Sue Deconnick. It's a story set in jail populated mostly by black women. It's an odd message Kelly is trying to sell. Bitch Planet was supposed to go for 30 issues. It went for 10, because it's a bunch of European women with cats reading a story about criminal black women. Let's see how that plays out for you. A bunch of European women who seem to be obsessed with African women. They treat them like purse puppies. Let me admit that the concept of Bitch Planet is very good. If the writer wasn't certifiably insane, the story would be successful. It could have a Guardians of the Galaxy meets The Running Man vibe to it, but it's poisoned by Sue Deconnick's venomous brand of feminism. Now, not all the SJWs at mainstream comics are actually this far out, but Kelly is the real deal. She seems to think she lives in the Middle East or North Africa, an actual patriarchy. Kelly wishes so badly she was oppressed. She is a good-looking, healthy woman working her dream job in a first-world nation. She is living life on easy mode. I don't know if she knows it. When good-looking women talk about their oppression, most men roll their eyes or laugh. Men have pressure that women can't even imagine. Kelly really has a hard-on for men. And yes, the usual blonde and blue-eyed or red hair and green-eyed men are way overrepresented. Even if you see blonde women, they are most likely to be the antagonists. It's kind of weird because most of the people working on the project are self-hating liberal European Americans, but most of the characters are African American ladies. It's sort of awkward. It feels like Kelly is using them as a shield to sell her propaganda. I get the feeling if someone else wrote black characters like this, Sue Deconnick would be the first to cry cultural appropriation. But it's cool when she does it, for some reason. I read all 10 issues of Bitch Planet. Kelly has some serious anger issues against men. But the whole premise is flawed. She doesn't live in some third world hellhole. The oppression she is claiming doesn't exist in the first world. It feels weird that Kelly is portraying very mild sexism in the first world when there are women in Islamic nations getting caned, and not the fun caning we have here. There are Islamic nations where they marry children to adults, but Kelly won't touch that issue because Islam is good and the West is bad. She is holding beliefs not in accord with reality. Most people would call that crazy. The whole thing is just cringe on top of cringe. If the story is about black women, why didn't she just get a black woman to write the story? The rule in storytelling is to write what you know. It would have been a more authentic tale if Kelly basically wrote herself into the story. Now, don't get me wrong, I can write great black characters, but I'm not an SJW, and I can write even-handed characters. I won't pander to anyone, and I don't need to put characters down to elevate others. Kelly has been writing for years and hasn't learned this. She is living life on easy mode, and she isn't growing as a writer. She doesn't have to grow as a writer because there are no consequences for her bad writing. She doesn't have to actually sell books, and she will always get hired for new projects. It's a weird case of failing upwards. There are a ton of protected classes in mainstream comics, where as long as you are a woman, trans, gay, or Muslim, you can't get fired. In fact, you'll win awards. The only thing they can't do is sell books. Bitch Planet was plotted to get to 30 issues. It didn't even get to a year before it was canceled. It's kind of funny because there are pictures of women sending in pictures with tattoos from the book, tattoos that will last years, for a book that got to 10 issues. By issue 10, it was shipping 14,000. Why, you ask? Because it's describing a first world setting that doesn't exist in the first world, but it actually does exist in many Islamic countries and African countries. By issue 10, she couldn't find more than 14,000 people to support her project. This kind of passive aggressiveness is just nonsense. Women are willing to spend hundreds on non-compliant tattoos, but they wouldn't spend $4 a month on Bitch Planet. This is part of the problem with mainstream comics. People like the idea of Bitch Planet or Captain Marvel more than they like the actual comics. Sue Deconnick and a bunch of other writers will get a series, have it get canceled after 5 issues, and immediately get a new series. It's an unbelievably sick industry. If you put any of the comics get writers on these failing projects, they would sell. But the Comics Gate guys have the wrong politics. Honestly, it's frustrating to watch them leave money on the table. Bitch Planet gets plenty of letters and photographs every month, but that doesn't translate into actual sales because the book is pretty bad. A try-hard, cringy, rebellious photograph. Who are you flipping off? The patriarchy? If you live in America, you live in one of the greatest first world nations on earth at the best time in history. There's very little left to rebel against. You got a tattoo on your hand for a comic that lasted less than a year because you're raging against the machine. And this is just blew me away. Why has Dick been so cool towards me? What every girl should know, your vagina is disgusting. Can you say straw man? What makes it worse, it has a lot of, the comic has a lot of potential, but it's just ruined by the writer's misandry and racism. The story is a highly anticipated women in prison sci-fi exploitation riff, claims the summary. A funny note is that Sue Deconnick is way more woke than Chelsea Kane. Kelly has trans women in the women's prison for some reason, as you can tell by their male genitalia. Why would a state send men to a woman's prison? They have done it a few times in the real world, and of course there were allegations of sexual battery. I assumed Bitch Planet was for biological... Bitch Planet's the name of the prison colony. I assumed it was for biological women. Why a brutal and cruel authoritarian government would send biological men there is beyond me. But don't let logic get in the way of a narrative. And the story concept is a little weird. The main characters are women prisoners who are in prison, many of them for violent crime. It's a tough sell to make thieves and killers the heroes. If you read the comic, the letters section is pure cancer. It's the weird feminist cancer. Bizarre language of matriarchies and patriarchies, oppressors and oppressed. It's pretty much European male is bad, European women is good. Kelly pays lip service to the brown woman good trope, but she is, of course, a European woman who, oddly enough, is writing about African American women in prison. The whole thing feels sort of racist. Kelly is in a bit of a catch-22. You're supposed to write what you know, tell your story, but if the main characters were European women, the woke crowd would bitch and moan. So for woke points, Sue Deconnick uses African American women. The whole thing feels kind of degrading. The back of the comic has articles on how oppressed European women in first world countries are, but it fails to actually show any oppression. My point is that the comic itself isn't a vector to tell a story. The story itself is racist propaganda, and the letters and articles in the back are really not shy about letting you know how much they hate men and Europeans, which is odd because, judging by the letters, the audience is mostly European American women who seem to hate other Europeans. The self-hating European thing is really weird, but what is even stranger is that all these European American women are using these African American characters as their puppets. It feels like a minstrel show or something. I'm having a hard time putting it into words. It feels like this bunch of far-left women are using African American characters as puppets to attack European men. It leaves the reader with a dirty feeling. It seems odd they couldn't manage to sell more than 14,000 copies. Their fellow feminists just weren't willing to pony up the $4 per month. They like the idea of Bitch Planet, but not the actual comic book. It's kind of a cliche of the left in general that they don't put their money where their mouths are. Wow. That is the AOC wide-eyed expression right there. It says it's like protective coloration or something. It says, stay away, I'm venomous. Anyway, one of the straw man things I came across is the idea that women and their bodies are disgusting. There's that parody ad I showed you saying that vaginas are disgusting. It begs the question, in what country are women and vaginas disgusting? Because you aren't talking about the United States. Maybe in Islamic countries where women are considered unclean. Kelly Sue and feminists in general seem to have an obsession with their pussies. There's nothing special about a pussy. Speaking of which, this woman, Japanese woman, makes vaginal art. Yeah. She makes cell phone cases out, I guess, are 3D imprints of someone's vagina. Because that's daring. Listen, if this was 1950 and you made vaginal art, maybe I would say, okay, it's you're pushing boundaries. This is 2020. This is not a big deal. This doesn't shock anyone. It doesn't even interest anyone. It's just not interesting. It's like if you made a handprint art or something, it's just about as interesting. People have the internet at their cell phones. There's nothing taboo or surprising about any part of the human anatomy. Kids have the internet. They can see anything and everything. They can see more things than they could possibly want. Some of these are cool tattoos. This is the non-compliance. It's a tattoo from the book. It's kind of cool, but again, it's for a comic that lasted 10 issues. It's nothing to be. The evil white guy, evil European male, stands by idly and watches 3 African American children get gunned down in a hail of gunfire. This group of European and 1 Japanese guy, and then these 2 African characters are making fun of their penis sizes. Is that funny, or is it's just hackneyed, trite, overused humor? That's not. If you're a stand-up comic, even in the 80s, it would have been overdone. I mean, these jokes are really, really weird. Every light-skinned character is bad, and every dark-skinned character is good. It's the comic constantly has things like European men slapping women on the rear end, like a movie cliche from the 1950s. But here's the thing. That stuff didn't even happen in the 50s. It only happened in movies, and the most ridiculous thing is men in the first world nations don't act like this. Men only act like this in Deconnick's sexist fantasy world. Kelly Sue Deconnick is a deeply troubled person. I feel bad for her husband and son, though to be honest, in my experience, internet feminists aren't necessarily so hardcore in real life. A lot of feminists are flexing for social media, so who knows what Kelly Sue is really like. In her interview, she comes across as a shrill, screeching harpy who is most happy when she is drowning kittens. Please note, as we flip through the pages, the insane amount of blonde and red-haired people as the antagonists. You'll never see so many blondes and redheads as in a left-wing comic. The reason for this is the writers want to make absolutely sure that you know that these evil characters aren't Asian, Arab, or Latino. They are specifically English and German. A writer like Deconnick will never put an African in a bad light. It just can't exist in her feminist utopia. On an aside, it's funny that Deconnick has 2 kids, because there is an aspect of feminism that is pro-abortion and anti-family. This aspect is terrified by the thought of healthy, happy families. These feminists keep telling young women not to get married, focus on their careers. But the weird thing that happens is that these feminist writers, these articles, will usually get married and have kids, but the women who read the articles stay single. Then these women enter their 30s and realize they were sold a bill of goods, and they're childish, and it's too late. An image like this isn't punk rock when you're in your 30s. It's just silly. I guess she's some kind of knitter, and she's knitting these non-compliant mittens or sweaters or something. I guess that's her middle finger up and her tongue out, because she's a daring rebel in one of the safest first world nations on earth, where women have every legal right. They have equal protection under the law. This is just silly. This is silliness. If you tell me you're in the Middle East and you took off your hijab and you're giving the middle finger to the establishment, that's one thing. But if you tell me you're in Europe or United States And you think you're a rebel because you support a comic book? You're out of your freaking mind. Yeah, that's a cool tattoo. It's the non-compliance tattoo, a little Superman thing over it. So some of these are pretty sweet. There's one with that's all right. One with a Captain Marvel icon on it, which is pretty cool. Toxic Femininity and Kelly Sue Deconnick. Kelly Sue Deconnick wrote this insane misandrist propaganda encouraging women and girls not to marry or have kids. All the while, Deconnick has 2 kids. It's almost as if she believes in rules for thee and not for me. The whole comic is just sad. It feels so forced. The first world that Deconnick lives in just doesn't have the levels of oppression that Deconnick writes about. But the Middle East, Africa, Latin America does. But there's no way in hell Deconnick can actually point that out. That she can't point out that brown countries aren't so great to women and children. It's like feminists in the first world all agree not to talk about issues in the second and third world. It feels like a house of cards. And the house of cards didn't even last a year. It actually surprises me that she didn't get more support. The low sales of Bitch Planet kind of reminds me of Anita Sarkeesian and the low views of feminist frequency, which I just checked. They have likes and comments disabled on every video. I'm sure if anyone wrote in to this magazine, I'm sure she's only printing the letters that she wants to print. Anyway, in the back of the magazine, there are pages and pages of these weird far left feminist diatribes about the evils of white men or high status in our culture, and we have a long tradition of portraying them. Who are the white men that you hate so badly? I don't know any white men. I know Western Europeans and Northern Europeans and Southern Europeans and Eastern Europeans. Are you telling me an Irishman has the same privilege as an Englishman? Or an Italian? Or a Spanish? Or a Portuguese? Or a Polish? Hungarian? You're telling me they're all equal to you? They're not. They're not white. They're Europeans. These people are these are the people on the left are the most racist people you'll ever meet. Hypervisibility versus visibility and trans representation. She wrote in the character, she included some transsexual characters that were put into a woman's prison, where it's funny because Chelsea Kane wrote that recent book about man-eaters where there was no room in man-eaters for transsexual characters because it was about biological women undergoing puberty and having turned into the equivalent of werewolves or something. But Chelsea Kane is probably like an old school Democrat, and Kelly Sue Deconnick is just far left. Okay, this character is mixed African and European with blue eyes. Is that so? Well, I always figured the devil for a white girl. How insanely racist is that? If you want to look at European Americans, or European women in general, are they the most violent? No. People who look like this are more violent than European women. You can look up any FBI crime statistics or any global statistics. Calling the white girl a devil logically, factually doesn't make any sense. The European woman is not going to stab you or rob you or hurt you. That's not what the numbers show. The writer knows this, and she puts the reader in a strange position where the reader is on the African American woman's side, but this doesn't logically make sense. It's cognitive dissonance. It's the ability of these far left people to hold two ideas in their heads that are completely opposed to each other. Anyway, this male tears. Visual disclaimers: like I'm a woman, I try to utilize tools of humor like hyperbole and sarcasm. It's me being a misandrist and a bitch. Isn't that code for sperm? The two lesbian women with their middle fingers up who are they flipping off? If you're in the Middle East, you'll get caned for being lesbian. You're in America or in Europe where you can actually get married and you won't get hurt. It's like the softest, weakest form of rebellion when you're rebelling against people who gave you all the rights. You didn't even have to fight for them. Everyone, you're going to see way more blondes and red-headed people in these left-wing comics. They really don't want you to think, oh, this person might be a Mexican. They're definitely Germans or English. They really seem to hate the Germans and English. You're not a badass bitch. You're a middle-aged, obese woman who's probably dying of heart disease. I'm not saying you're obese as an insult. I'm saying it as a factual description. You're morbidly obese. You're not badass because you have a tattoo. A badass woman would eat vegetables and probably lose 100 pounds. Non-compliance. These cats will eat you when you die, alone and single. They'll feast on your corpse. Because that's what cats do. These are the photos and the letters that people sent in. I guess this is after Trump won and Trump derangement syndrome. Sweet Jesus. Look at this guy. That is a school shooter right there. The soy boy, Ethan Van Sciver often talks about the soy boy, though he's doing a little rock eyebrow, so that's kind of saving grace. Are his eyes, like one eye staring off in the other direction? The soylent smirk. He can't quite grin. It's almost a straight line, but one corner is curled up just a touch. This dude is probably just as nuts as possible. Oh, he's wearing the non-compliant shirt, which is for women in prison. He wants you to know he is a feminist ally, or he's one of the male feminists. Nasty women keep fighting. Okay, in 2019, you have the chance to vote for the 2020 president. I'm sure you guys picked a great, I'm sure the DNC picked a great candidate for you, because Lord knows you guys don't actually get to choose your candidates. Maybe Hillary will, rebel, we are not things. Yes, technically we're all things. We are animate objects. Non-compliant, rebel. You're in the first world. You're not rebelling against anything. There are no consequences to your rebellion. This is just nonsense. Your kid doesn't even know what smash the patriarchy means. If anything, there's a toxic feminine matriarchy that we're seeing. Some tattoos, that's kind of cool. Then these weird anti-male articles in the back of this magazine. She does a lot of things where she's talking about the pressure for women to remain thin and in shape and beautiful. That really seems to be something that Sue Deconnick is focused on. But who is telling women that they need to remain thin and in shape? Other women are telling women they need to remain thin and in shape. Or the fashion industry, which is women and gay men. It's not the your average man telling you these things. So this is just the most asinine. This is the same with the transsexual. The men with breast implants are sent to a woman's prison because Sue Deconnick wants you to know how woke she is. They're men, biological men, with penis and testes, silicone breasts, sent to a woman's prison. And they're trying to say that the country is run by this authoritarian, patriarchal, brutal, repressive dictatorship type thing. Trump's America, am I right? So in this brutal authoritarian dictatorship, they're sending men with fake breasts into a women's prison. That wouldn't happen. That doesn't make any sense. The story doesn't make any sense. I guess the man is having a relationship with the woman, the black woman, and the European man with brown reddish hair. I included the scene actually because I read it. I thought it was kind of a sweet scene. She kisses him. She has lipstick on. Says, "I'm fine, Rose, and now we're both pretty," because she puts lipstick on him with her lips. I thought that was kind of a well-written scene. There's a scene. Okay, two guys should never ever do this, and I don't mean that in like a. No human being should do that. This is just nonsense. Actually, I thought this scene was interesting because it looks like a self-insertion. This haircut, there's a video with Kelly Sue Deconnick being interviewed where she's whining and complaining about people who are not buying her comics. And she just says something like, "If you don't want my comics, then don't buy my comics." Literally in a voice very similar to that. And she's wearing a red wig. It actually looks kind of like this. So this kind of feels like a self-insertion into the comic. And actually, I didn't even notice this woman before. Okay, there's this cafe scene where she's making fun of these blonde-haired or red-haired people, making fun of your skinny Starbucks blonde girl trying to stay in shape or something. And then this, I don't know if that blonde or red-haired guy is supposed to be racist. Right? So he says, skins, they like them big like that. It's in their animal nature. Big asses, big lips. You ever F a skin, it's wild. I guess skin is supposed to mean African American? I don't know why. I've never heard that term skin before. Anyway, so this guy who's clearly English or German or something, Western European, is so racist against black women, African American women, but then he enjoys having sex with them. Let me clue you into a little thing about racist people. They don't like having sex with other races. That doesn't make any freaking sense. If you fetishize or even just enjoy having sex with, I don't know, Asians or Africans or, I don't know, Russians or Hungarians, then you're probably not racist against those people if you find them attractive. Then he says, like a baboon. I think he's supposed to be talking about African American women that he finds attractive enough to have sex with. And then he calls them baboons. No, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make any sense. Racist people don't want to have anything to do with other races or the races they specifically don't like. They wouldn't have sex with them and then call them baboons. This only exists. This is just a straw man that only exists in Kelly Sue Deconnick's mind. It's sick. It's just bizarre. And then her weird power fantasy where she takes a rolling pin, probably kills the guy, hits him with a rolling pin in the head. Probably either blinding him or breaking his neck, breaking his jaw. But the whole thing's a straw man. Nobody speaks like this. Most racists I've met, it doesn't matter if they have light skin or dark skin, they don't speak like that. They simply don't want to have anything to do with other races. It doesn't matter if they're African or if they're Irish. That's not a good picture. They mainly want to be segregated. Okay, this scene is like a cringe storm with cringe sprinkles, with cringe shavings, and then some cringe whipped cream. Okay, these two girls in a shower, and then the security guard, the guard, is in the shower, and he has a huge hole dug out instead of just a tiny little pinhole. And there's an exchange where the girls have sex in the shower, and they get private time to do it, but he has to watch. Which, get in focus. If you're watching a scene like this, how do you draw this and write this character and not think, I'm not saying exactly racist, but it's a pretty weird storytelling device for Mrs. Cracker Honky White Kelly Sue Deconnick to depict these characters like this. If you told me some racist drew this comic, I would believe you. But Kelly Sue Deconnick she's better than you because she's a feminist. Anyway, the girl's in the shower and she's enjoying herself completely. And the guy is watching because he's a man and men are evil, right? Again, I'm sure they want to portray the guy as being some kind of racist, but racists don't watch other races enjoy themselves. So you can just get that thought out of your head. Anyway, she pulls this plumbing out of the wall, bashes the tiles, and let me tell you, if you've ever had to take down a tile wall before in a like you remodel your bathroom, that's a lot harder than it looks. That stuff is really, really on there. Its tiles are really tough, and they're cemented onto a wallboard. It's very, very difficult. But again, this is like this power woman fantasy where this 5'6" woman who's probably 150 pounds, which there are very, very fit 5'6" women who are 150 pounds, is just beating the hell out of a prison guard. That doesn't happen. Even a very strong woman, who this woman is clearly portrayed as being very, very strong, but I think they mentioned her height earlier on. It's like 5'6" or something. You're not going to take down a 6-foot security guard, a prison guard. The prison guard is going to beat you to death because he's experienced with hand to hand. He's all geared up too. All right, they show his penis here. No human on Earth has a penis that small. That's not what penises look like, and they don't look that small. That's just nonsense. It's because Kelly Sue Deconnick is so angry at these light-skinned male characters. Okay, he's watching her, so he's excited, probably erect, probably enjoying himself, probably to completion, if you know what I mean. He wouldn't be flaccid. Doesn't make any sense. The only reason they're portraying this is to make him look bad. Having this large African woman beat up this not very well hung European man who looks like an idiot. Okay. Women aren't that muscular. Look at her triceps and biceps. The most muscular African American woman you can see would be those tennis players, the Williams sisters. They're very, very, very muscular. They're very strong, and they're in amazing shape. They would get their asses kicked by your average man, and they would definitely get their asses kicked by a prison guard. Prison guards are very, very tough. This is just a weird power fantasy. It's just sick and twisted stuff. And then she spurts out about the Trump election. Anyway, that was all 10 issues of Bitch Planet. It's a sad comic book. And in one of these articles I was reading, they were talking about something about they had plotted it out to go 30 issues, and this was in the middle of the run when they were still selling pretty well. I don't know what they opened up at. They must have opened up the first issue over 30,000, but like I said, by issue 10 they got down to 14,000. And they're talking about these tattoos, people getting tattoos, and they're trying to imply that, they were hoping to get more than 10 issues. They didn't even get a year. And these women have all these non-compliant tattoos in America, the freest first world nation that is the safest nation for women. Anyway, this is cancer. But leave a like and a comment and let me know what you think.